This week's episode of PokeClass is sponsored by Collector's Cash, your #1 place to go for all your single cards and sealed products. Make sure you check them out after the show at www.collectorscash.com. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 104 of PokeClass, where today we are going to be looking at another deck born through the release of Plasma Storm. So this particular deck takes an already fairly successful strategy and develops it even further with the new cards that we have been given. So today's episode is going to be analysing Klinklang, or PlasmaKlang as it has been nicknamed for this format. So this deck is a revised version of the deck that won US Nationals all that time ago and is set to bring Klinklang up as a big threat for states and regionals coming up very soon. Over here in the UK, there have been 3 city championships in the new format, and this deck has won 2 of those events and reached the final of another, which should put the power of this deck into context for you. So without further ado, let's take a look at the new Klinklang that this deck is based around from our newest set. So this guy is obviously a metal type plasma Pokemon with 140 HP, 3 retreat cost, fire weakness, a single attack, and ability. Now the attack really isn't anything special, but is very fun to win games with in the strangest of situations. But anyway, it's the ability that you need to be looking at here called Plasma Steel, which states that while Klinklang is in play, you prevent all damage done to your metal Pokemon from your opponent's Pokemon EX. Now you should all realise how strong this is, as especially through the release of Plasma Storm, emphasis on strong and fast EX attackers is at its peak, so Klinklang is set to stop all of those mono EX decks in their tracks. With complete protection from all EX attackers, Klinklang is free to set up attackers and take its sweet time to win the game, while the opponent's attacking options are limited by a huge amount. So from here, you're going to need a decent metal type attacker to get your prizes through the game, and from before Plasma Storm, there really isn't much that can keep up, so luckily we got a shiny new EX to play with in the new set, Cobalion EX. Now Cobalion EX is actually quite a solid card, but with Klinklang protecting it, it gets even better. Cobalion has 2 attacks, with the first called Righteous Edge and costs us a single metal energy to do 30 damage, which is actually fairly decent for some early damage while you're setting up your stage 2s. The extra effect that this attack has is that you can discard a special energy attached to the defending Pokemon, and this is going to be very strong against the likes of Tornadus EX and Bouffalant, both becoming more popular through the release of Hypnotoxic Laser. Discarding special energy without the need of using Enhanced Hammer is going to be very strong when slowing down the decks that do run those 2 attackers, and even any other deck that decides to run double colourless, Prism or Blend energy. Moving on to the second attack, which is also very strong, called Steel Bullet, which costs 2 metal and a colourless to do 100 damage. However, the small print tells us that this damage isn't affected by any effects of the defending Pokemon, so this includes anything from Eviolite and Weakness to various abilities such as Sigilif's Safeguard. What this means is that Cobalion will always be 2-shotting every EX that it attacks, and when paired with the fact that those EXs can't attack Cobalion while Klinklang is out, you've got yourself a very solid deck concept. To go with Cobalion EX, there is one other metal Pokemon that is worth including in your list, and that is a Cobalion that we have had since Noble Victories. This one has a very nice 120 HP for a regular basic Pokemon and 2 attacks. The first, Energy Press, does 20 damage plus 20 more for each energy on the defending Pokemon, which means to a fully powered Darkrai for example, you've got a solid 80 damage on a Pokemon that can't even damage you. The second attack is slightly better, inflicting 80 damage, and then the opponent's defending Pokemon cannot attack the next turn. So this is very useful when keeping track of what energy the opponent has on the field. So for example, if there is a Darkrai active with 3 energy on your opponent's side of the field, and then 1 on the bench with no energy, an Iron Breaker could be incredibly frustrating for the opponent. The final thing to note about the list you're about to see is that it will include the black and white Klinklang as well, so that you do have the option to also get one of those into play, which will give you the option of freely moving your energy around to mess with your opponent's damage placing even more. So enough of the details now, and onto the list, which looks a little bit something like this. Now this list is going to be tight for extra space, as you are running a stage 2 and need the support to get that, so the variant is going to be limited. We start off with your Pokemon, which starts with the 4-1-2-2 Klinklang line, which means 4 Klink, a single Klang, and 2 of each Klinklang. So as mentioned just now, you are running 2 of each Klinklang so that you have the 2 avenues to go down through the game. There is the one that you want to get out against the likes of Darkrai and heavy EX based decks, and then the other which makes you vulnerable to attacks, but allows you to be more flexible with your energy attachments, making up for the lack of energy acceleration in this deck. There also follows your attackers, which are 2 of each Cobalion, and then a single Keldeo EX. The cardio is essential at the moment to get out of annoying sleep flips because of Hypnotoxic laser, so that you can just rush in and then switch back into your attacker and carry on. This is obviously not as efficient as it would be in a deck such as Darkrai, as you need to have the switch in your hand every time, but it is still needed just in case. Onto your trainers now, where you start with the classic 4 Juniper and 4 N, and then we have 4 Skylar as well. Now this may seem excessive, but because you want your Klinklang out as soon as possible to protect your board from damage, you need to be able to fish out your heavy balls and rare candies quickly. Also, as long as you're getting your protection Klinklang out, you have the time to use multiple Skylars to get set up before attacking. Then comes the very important part of the deck, which allows you to draw more cards while you are sitting there watching your opponent try to do damage. The card is Tropical Beach, and I'm sure most of you know about this card already, as it allows you to draw cards up until you have 7 cards in your hand, but your turn immediately ends. Now this card is incredibly popular in Stage 2 decks for giving you the maximum amount of chance to draw into your rare candy and Stage 2. However, the added benefit of this card in this deck is that you can afford to continue to draw cards after your PlasmaKlang has hit the field, as your opponent will be considerably slower at dealing damage if their deck has little or no EX attackers. Moving on, and we have the expected 4 Pokemon Catcher and 4 Rare Candy for attacking and setting up, and then 4 Switch. 4 Switch is an obvious inclusion, as you need a way to get out of the poison and sleep because of Hypnotoxic laser and being able to retreat Klinklang. The other option you have here though is Escape Rope, which we're also giving to us in Plasma Storm. What Escape Rope does is allows you to switch your Pokemon out of the active spot, and then your opponent does the same, but they have the choice. Giving your opponent the choice may seem kind of strange, but since you don't run Hypnotoxic laser yourself, you don't need to worry about switching your opponent out of any special conditions, and it will help you to get some late game damage onto the board without using your catchers. Hitting the late game, most players' catchers are running low, and what Escape Rope allows you to do is force your opponent to bring up a bench Pokemon that they may not want damage on, so that you can pick it off in the following turns. This card is also very effective when your opponent's bench is getting low, forcing some damage on support Pokemon. Overall, the choice is up to you, but do be aware of the option. Onto your Pokemon search, where we have 3 Heavy Ball and 2 Ultra Ball, as Heavy Ball has no downside and can search out almost every Pokemon in your deck, and then we finish up the list with a single Super Rod for recovery and Computer Search for extra consistency. You also finish the list with 11 Metal Energy, which should be enough to get your attachment every single turn while keeping energy onto the field. And that is pretty much your skeleton list for this deck, and as you can see, with only 2 free spaces, the list is extremely tight, but mostly because of your dedication to a Stage 2, but there are some things you can do with this space. The main thing I would suggest would be possibly 2 Max Potion, just because you can sit there and take damage if you do play against non-EX attackers, and set up the rest of your field, and then Max Potion off the damage. The other reason is because you can switch over to the traditional Klinklang strategy later on in the game to move energy off of your late game attacker and then heal off the damage, denying the opponent of their game winning prizes. Another option you have to include another attacker is taking out 4 of your metal energy, placing in 4 blend of water, lightning, fighting and metal, and then you have the option of Terrakion. Now Terrakion is a very strong card against Darkrai, especially because you can spring it out of nowhere thanks to Shift Gear. However, I don't know if it is fully worth it, as you do have a pretty strong Darkrai matchup anyway. Where it can help is when a Darkrai deck is outspeeding you and you can drop a Terrakion with an energy and dare them to attack, which could be nice, but I'm not sure if it's worth it still. It definitely is an option though. Overall, this deck has been doing very well so far in the UK, and I've seen it doing well in other countries over Europe too, so definitely give this deck a go. However, as this deck starts to do better, players will have to include counters such as V-Create Victini to keep this deck at bay. For those of you that like control-based decks, then definitely give this one a try, and for those of you testing for states and regionals, you really do need to test against this, as it is a pain to play against. And that is pretty much it from me today, guys, and I hope you did enjoy it. I don't know about you, but I am enjoying the new format with the new cards from Plasma Storm. Laser gives a new layer of strategy to the game, and more new decks are coming forward, which I am really enjoying right now. But how are all of you finding it so far? So that is going to be it from me today, so that all that's left to say is thanks for watching, and if you did enjoy the video, I would really appreciate it if you could hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. So thanks again for watching everyone, and have a great week.